I also don't think the king was instrumental in this decision. It was very much pushed by William and the government. I think this is just a little bit of smoke and mirrors at the moment. He's still in the line of succession. He's still on the royal website. I'm sure he'll still be driving his cars saying the Duke of DOY on them. We have to remember that time and time again, both he and Sarah Ferguson had lost their HRH, but they continue to use them. She for commercial purposes. I think this is an attempt to deal with the problem, but I'm not sure it's going to be sufficient for public opinion.
The royal family has avoided a parliamentary process which would be required to strip the Duke of York of his titles. Following discussions with the King, Prince Andrew has agreed to give them up and retreat further from public life. In a statement, Prince Andrew admitted that accusations about him distract from the work of the royal family. He goes on to deny wrongdoing, but he has been under increasing pressure over his links with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. We can speak to Andrew Lownie, who is a royal historian and author of The Rise and Fall of the House of York. Morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning.
How significant is this that not only the titles are gone, but that the King managed to convince that Prince Andrew to do this without having to go through parliamentary process?
Well, the titles are only really being put into abeyance. They could actually come back. So I think this is a little bit of window dressing. And I also don't think the king was instrumental in this decision. It was very much pushed by William and the government. I think this is just a little bit of smoke and mirrors at the moment. He's still in the line of succession. He's still on the royal website. I'm sure he'll still be driving his cars saying the Duke of DOY on them. We have to remember that time and time again, both he and Sarah Ferguson had lost their HRH, but they continue to use them. She for commercial purposes. I think this is an attempt to deal with the problem, but I'm not sure it's going to be sufficient for public opinion.
So it's a fudge?
Yes.
And so the pressure, talk to us about the fact that you believe that the pressure came from Prince William and from the government rather than from the king himself.
Well, the Royal Palace needed to get ahead of this problem rather than reacting to it. They must have been worried what was going to come, not so much in Virginia Giuffre's book, which is out on Tuesday, which only really repeats the allegations she's made before. But there's another book called Blue Butterfly, which comes out next month, the memoirs of a victim. I think it's very likely we're going to have more disclosures from the Epstein files. Victims are now going to go into Capitol Hill and talk. And so I think this was an attempt to get ahead of the story. But from what I've heard from my sources, the king wasn't instrumental in this. Pressure was put on by the government saying, if you don't do this, we will be mounting an investigation into Andrew and Sarah. I think there are grounds still for an investigation into them, not just for their links to Epstein, which of course were much more extensive than they've let on, but also into their commercial activities in which they monetized their positions as members of the royal family.
So why is it that the titles are effectively, you just said, put to bed? This is because otherwise it would have to go through an act of parliament and would be seen as a waste of MPs' time.
Well, possibly. It would have brought out embarrassing disclosures, though there is, of course, a tradition that there is no parliamentary oversight of the royal family. It also means, of course, that the daughters are left alone and they can continue to be princesses. So I think that it was just felt that this was a neat way of appearing to penalise him without actually doing anything that was going to really make him suffer. He's still in Royal Lodge. He's never really had to pay any penalty for what he's done. And this they hope, would assuage public opinion.
So you're saying there is potentially the possibility that in the future, Prince Andrew, some years down the track, could suddenly just whip out Duke of York again and start calling himself that?
Yes, absolutely. And we found, I think, he's lost Knight of the Garter, which, is absolutely right. It was ridiculous, this chivalrous order he should be a member of. But of course, we've got to remember, he was given that order by the Queen shortly after pictures of him and Jeffrey Epstein appeared walking in Central Park. And so this again was the case of the royal family giving everyone two fingers, saying we can do what we want despite the bad publicity. So I'm not totally convinced that this is a real penalty for him in any way. It just looks good.
And when you talk about penalty, I wanted to ask that. You said you think he'll still be going around in his car, which has got, Duke of York effectively on the side and other things. Would there be a penalty? I mean, if suddenly Prince Andrew did decide to suddenly, in a few months, in a few years, start using Duke of York again, what is the penalty? What can the royal family actually do?
Well, they can remove the title, but you're absolutely right. They can't stop him using it. But he has been using HRH when he wasn't supposed to, as has Ferguson. When I'm talking about penalty, and I think that there are grounds for both of them to at least cooperate with the authorities over some of the Epstein allegations. They were both material witnesses. And we have to remember that 20 years ago, members of Parliament were calling the National Crime Agency to investigate Andrew for his time as a special trade representative. And those problems haven't gone away. In fact, I think we're going to see more of that material beginning to emerge. So I do think there are grounds for the Metropolitan Police and the National Crime Agency to look certainly at Andrew again, and for him to have to answer questions about his involvement with Epstein and actually what he was doing as special trade envoy to feather his own nest.
So this is the royal family trying to protect themselves ahead of this potentially happening?
Yes, this is an attempt to sort of get back on the side of public opinion. But I think, we do need proper accountability and transparency across the whole of the royal family. We need to have royal wills unsealed. We need to probably have a royal register. We need to have them exempted from the not exempted from the Freedom of Information Act. So I think they've let Andrew be the fall guy for any sort of wider accountability of the royal family, particularly its wealth, but also its ability to basically destroy records and historical records that relate to them.
It's interesting because many people would view this as the palace's attempt to make Prince Andrew go away and get him out of the headlines and reduce the embarrassment that has clearly been for the king and for the monarchy as a whole. But what you're suggesting is this could actually be the beginning of things actually getting worse.
Yes, I mean, clearly that they're trying to deal with the reputational damage. I mean, they should have, done this a long time ago. And if he had been genuine about putting his own family in the country first, he would have behaved differently. He would have moved out of Royal Lodge, for example, some time ago. So I don't think this is going to stop the problem. I think we're going to get more headlines. There's more material going to come out. And so I think this is only a sticking plaster, and they're going to have to do the proper operation later on.
Talk to us about Royal Lodge, because we've got lots of listeners getting in touch saying, how on earth is it that he can effectively be stripped of these titles, although, as you point out, he could still use them at a later date, they're just being put to bed. But he can still live in Royal Lodge. He hasn't really got an income. It's a 30-room mansion and he has to effectively pay rent on it. Explain that to us.
Well, I mean, he basically, when the Queen Mother died, in return for restoring it, which cost him up to £10 million, he was allowed to live there at a peppercorn rent. And he has an ironclad lease, which has many years to run. And as long as he keeps it up, he can stay there. I don't think he's short of money. I mean, he's inherited money. He's been made quite a lot of money over the years. I mean, quietly under the radar. So he can stay there. And I mean, whether people like it or not, the only way he'll go is if he goes voluntarily, or there's some pressure put on him by the royal family, for example, to say that they will penalise the daughters if he doesn't go. The daughters are sort of part of the negotiating terms here. And I think the deal has been done that basically we'll leave the daughters alone. They can be princesses. They may be, they'll be part of the royal family. There may be a role for them in future, but you need to fall on your sword or appear to fall on your sword. But in some ways, the material terms of his life haven't changed since yesterday. So, it's not a big penalty he's paid.
Why do you think the pressure came from Prince William and the government rather than the king?
Well, Prince William knows the reputational damage. He is, I think, a little bit more ruthless than the king. The king has sentimental feelings towards his brother. I think the government too could see that this was a distraction from what the monarchy was doing, and I think they kind of put the iron into the soul of the king, which wasn't there. So that's my understanding, anyway.
Really interesting to speak to you this morning. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
That is Andrew Lownie. He is a royal historian. He's author of The Rise and Fall of the House of York. So absolutely fascinating there. We're learning more and more of this story as we go on throughout the course of the morning. So he's called this window dressing, a fudge, essentially that these titles of Prince Andrew's have been put to bed, but at any point in the future, should he choose to bring them back and use them again, he could do. He said that the pressure had come here from, not from the King, but from William and from the government. There's pressure to potentially launch an investigation into Prince Andrew and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, of course, of whom he still lives with, at Royal Lodge. But it feels like this is a way, Andrew Lownie says, to get the public on side, feel that Prince Andrew is being dealt with without actually dealing with him.